I just can't emphasize training and awareness enough, and an engagement with an IT professional group like yours, like VCIO, because it continues, the pressure, the exposure just continues to grow and grow and grow. I don't see it slowing down.
I don't either. And the sophistication of AI and all the benefits.
Thank you, Tom. My hourly rate's a little more than that, but we'll settle up at the
end. I'd put a marker to that later, though.
Right, that's right.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Roundtable. Today we have Brad Serf, principal from Gibson Insurance, and we're going to talk about cyber insurance. What are the ramifications of not having it? What were the origins of it? And this conversation is going to go many different ways, I am sure. Brad, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tony.
Sure, and I got Tom.
Good to see you. The studio looks great. I am so excited to be here.
So, cyber insurance. I've been seeing some high-profile attacks that companies are going through. And ransomware, I mean, I don't see it every day with the headlines, but they haven't gone away.
Most of them don't make the headlines, Tony.
Yeah.
Most of them don't make the headlines. People are quietly paying. Ransomware is a when, not if conversation.
Yeah. And, so you want to be protected. I mean, I know plenty of businesses that if they were down for just a matter of days, I don't know if they ever rebound.
Really, that's always the question. When people talk about, well, what do we do? I think the first place you start is how long can you afford to be down? In a calm, this isn't a the sky is falling conversation. This is a practical business conversation. In plenty of businesses, and you know this, maybe you can take orders with a pen and paper for a day or two. Maybe you have enough inventory that you can muscle out some orders for a few days, maybe a week. Maybe you can't. And that's a question you got to be real about. How long can you honestly afford to be down? And then you have to plan accordingly.
Yeah, I think, backing it up all the way to the humility and understanding that this can happen to you. I think the most dangerous mindset that we see in our interaction with clients is, well, we're not in healthcare. We don't have personally identifiable information, large data sets we don't hold credit cards. I mean, okay, you may have a slightly lower risk profile than other businesses, but every business has exposure to cyber. If you have a computer or a technology point, which I think 99% of businesses do today, you have a very real exposure. And there's really disturbing statistics that would suggest over 90% of businesses have a vulnerability or have been violated in one way or another, and less than 30% ever know that that they're exposed.
That's a hell of a statistic. Like,
Tony, think about the conversations we've had. And, in our business at VCIO Global, it's been just a few years. But prior to that, as an ERP consultant, I'm telling you, couple times a month, we would get a call from a client who reminded us we were under NDA. We've had a breach. They've got our data. We're working out payment now. But if we don't get our data back after we pay, because that's real.
Right.
So this is, and I'm telling you, they're so sophisticated. You say, oh, these are math majors attacking you, folks. These aren't, people that don't know. They've already looked at your website. They figured out maybe you're a $20 million company, so you should be able to afford about $150,000. They already know statistically when you're going to pay.
And they have a customer service department. Like, they run it like a business, right. And then they walk you through it. I love the play. It's like, all right, so you're going to pay this ransom, and then we're going to connect you with one of our team members to get you back. You're going to have your data, and we're going to demonstrate how we got in so that it won't happen again. Like, you're supposed to thank them.
Right.
Thanks for,
Right.
and
Supposed to thank them and trust them.
trust them
Yeah.
that they didn't put another payload or something like that in there. But it's funny because I don't know. Well, let's ask the professional. How many do you see a rise in companies requesting this type of insurance, or is there still this hesitation? Like, well, we haven't been hit. We have an IT guy. We're.
Right. No, certainly the adoption rate is much higher. The conversation is easier today because of either press, or they know other CFOs, other owners, businesses that have been, that have had some type of ransomware or some type of attack where somebody voluntarily released funds, a social engineering type of issue that the business has been impacted. So the conversation is easier today, but there are still business owners that think, well, I don't think this is going to happen to me. And Tom, I liked your statement. It's not a matter of if, but when, and what the financial impact would be. And that's often hard to quantify, but I think going through an underwriting process is going to help provide clarity. The application process and the engagement with IT professionals like yourself is going to enlighten you as to where your vulnerabilities and exposures are, and then you begin the work of, preventing it from happening. If you think about when your 16-year-old gets his or her license, do you say they're never going to have an accident? Well, you might think that, but people think well about their kids or their businesses, or they're protected. Do you think about, let's go buy the cheapest insurance known to man to transfer this risk? No, you would say don't speed, don't drink and drive, don't be distracted with your friends. Yeah, that's right. You got one coming with a license.
My son just turned 60.
Okay, but I mean, you immediately think to safe behaviors to educate the driver of that vehicle so that they don't get themselves in an accident or a loss scenario. I mean, the same mindset should apply to cyber, but people often don't think of it that way. But more people certainly today, Tony, are taking it serious.
We do see some level of false hope. It's like we have VCIO Global, we have a strong MSP. What's the risk? What's the big deal? We're backed up. Let's say they attack us. Shit, we'll be back up in 24 hours. Like, that mindset's out there.
I will say, though, that I've also seen a shift, and it was why I was so excited about our relationship with Gibson, is not just that Brad invites me to go skiing sometimes, but, they really take a consultative approach, right? Just the way you laid it out. Like, I guess in my mind, it was sort of like insurance salesman, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got an insurance guy. But the way Gibson consults and the way you approach that conversation, right? We're just trying to transfer some risk here. Right. How much risk are you prepared to take? Right? Like, that's,
well, yeah,
you like your approach.
I do too. So you walk them through this exercise, right? And I mean, think about when the boss, his computer's down or internet's out.
Right.
That's a crisis.
It's a bad day.
It's a bad day. Now your entire company.
Right.
And your inability to ship product. Like, can you put orders on a paper and pad? Going back to what you said, Tom. Well, if I'm Amazon, I don't know if that tracks.
That's right.
Yeah. You think about your web business, and we see this everywhere. Almost every company's a web company at some level.
I would say every company is a tech company on all levels.
Well, yeah. Okay, that's true, but now your website's down. Your ability to get these orders has been compromised.
Yeah.
How's that feel?
Yeah.
For a minute.
That's
or a day.
Yeah, that's a bad day.
And customers call, they gave their personal information. So now there's panic and if you have thousands of orders, all it takes is one customer. Oh my God, so-and-so got hacked, and now poof.
Brad, how do they get ready? I mean, how's this conversation start?
Yeah, if you're not engaged in a relationship with a broker that's talking about cyber, you need to be asking the question. That's the first thing. And then the second thing would be to, go through an underwriting process if you don't currently have a policy in place. Because that is actually free consulting, or your time is worth something. But that application process is going to take you through your vulnerabilities and their concerns. They know where losses have happened, and they know that the hackers are arguably a step ahead of the technology to prevent them. And it's especially concerning with AI today, when you can replicate voices and they know where you are, they're tracking your keystrokes. But that application process and the questions which you'll go through is going to help you understand the exposure. And then, then you need to partner with, forms, endorsements, policies, procedures, people, protocol, all the things that are part of cyber risk is going to help you to develop a plan of action and procure a policy that will best protect you in the event of a loss. We don't even, the sophistication and the motivation of these hackers is we never know what the next risk is. Not a quarter goes by where we never thought of that one. There's some really disturbing. It's not just ransomware anymore.
Right.
It's not just social engineering tricking you from funds. It's it could be things like an allegation that, Tom, we know you were visiting some websites that you shouldn't have been visiting, and you're like, well, think maybe I did, or maybe somebody got, who knows?
Right.
And we're going to expose you to the local news media as the CEO of this company.
Yep.
Really troubling stuff.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's not true, but it makes you think about
I think that's the big fear in AI and in social spoofs, right? Yeah. It by the time you prove it isn't true, the news cycle's passed.
Yeah, right.
Nobody cares about the public opinion has already been formed.
That's right.
We're in this weird phase. Like we were talking about electric vehicles later, like we feel it's a practice run for whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like this, this landscape where, like you mentioned social spoofs, like there's some pretty convincing shit out there. But I feel like over time we'll know the game. Now the game's always changing, but like ChatGPT, love ChatGPT, love Copilot, but you get to know at some point, you use ChatGPT.
Right.
But back to the underwriting process a minute, because I smiled, Tony. So we actually get introduced to new prospective clients because once you start the underwriting process,
they got questions they can't answer.
They can't answer.
We need Tom. We need Tony.
So help them understand. Like, talk to them about the kind of information they need to have so they're ready to be a good partner with their broker.
Yeah. Well, certainly things like multi-factor authentication that is a minimum cost of entry today. It's like requiring a driver's license for a person to drive a car. It just, the carriers have to have that or they're not going to offer protection. The training in if you are doing wire transfers, what is your relationship with your bank? What is your relationship with who is authorized to release such funds? And what is the belt and suspenders approach to assure that you're not releasing funds to a different, because here's the other behavior or the other thing that has occurred. We have had very smart and sophisticated clients fooled. And that's what makes this so compelling. It's not people that are reckless or, flying by the seat of their pants kind of. These are well-run companies. Can
I tell you a story?
Yes, please.
So we're, Donovan, and I think Donovan at Innovia would be, I'm not telling a story he wouldn't tell, so I'm going to tell it. So Innovia, INNOVIA. We're an IT company. We got engineer. We think we're pretty buttoned up. Right. We've got all the stuff. And our CFO gets an email from Donovan. Says, hey, go ahead, transfer that $35,000. Here's the wire, which is not uncommon. That's money that moves around in this business. And only because our bank was not quite as automated as many banks are, they called Donovan and said, hey, we just want to make sure we're sending it to the right account. Can you, And he said, you know what, let me check with Brian. Right. So he calls Brian. He says, so where are we sending this? And Brian's like, wait a minute, you told me to send it. Right. They had changed the first I to a lowercase l. Everything else was flawless. They had captured our signatures. They had our logos. The email looked 100% legit.
Yeah.
And we had authorized the cash to go.
That's right.
Well, all right. So one other quick story, because I want to get back to the insurance process. We had a client that had a Teams attack. There's a formal name to it. Shame on me for not recalling this perfectly, but all this homework that goes on behind the scenes, and they ended up then engaging, based on that homework, engaging an employee. So they ended up sending all this spam, purposeful spam, to these individuals. And then they call the individuals on Teams. It says, hey, I'm from the help desk, and I see that you've been getting a ton of spam. I'd love to be able to solve this problem for you. Like, oh, thank God. And credential them in.
Right.
They got you.
That's right.
So how long has cyber been a thing as far as insurance goes?
My memory is about 10 to 12 years ago, you started to see the product being offered, and it was really quite expensive initially. And then, I think the claims and the attacks were things that the carriers hadn't even thought of. The attackers, again, being maybe one step ahead. But then I think the confidence level in the underwriting world began to, here's what we're willing to cover. We're going to sublimit social engineering, for example. We're going to require multi-factor authentication, which is going to, limit the exposure. So then you saw really competitive pricing. We saw for privately held firms, maybe in the 5 to 50 million zone, we would see a reasonable product, $1 million cyber liability limit, maybe a $250,000 social engineering limit. We would see pricing in the, $3,000 to $5,000 annual range. So really competitive. Now I think the underwriting is getting a little more refined to what the exposure of the business is, and you might be tiered. You might see $500 to $7,500 kind of annual range, but it's not inexpensive. That's not just throw around money, but it's also not cost prohibitive. We don't typically see cyber policies, exceeding, $10,000, $15,000 for a privately held business in that range of 50 million and under in revenues, unless you're really a heavy tech oriented company or maybe a healthcare facility with lots of, but don't think you're not a target, because I think the hackers are indiscriminate. That's what I would say. They don't care who they're pursuing.
Oh, they'll cast a wide net. And
very wide, yeah.
And if they're trying to get in 100,000 doors, they just need to get in one.
That's exactly right.
Because that's another fallacy that you hear from business owners. Like, well, I'm a local dentist office. They don't care about me. Bullshit.
Right.
But after the MFA, what else? What else can they do to get ready to have this discussion?
Well, yeah, Tom, I would say, what AI is doing now, and the kind of the simulating the voice, simulating maybe even appearance. You mentioned, what if the boss is hacked? That's who they go after often, is the C-suite we see, and it's very convincing. So and the boss is often traveling. They've got maybe other people with their credentials within their system to help keep things moving, and it creates additional vulnerabilities. So just the understanding and the humility at the C-suite level, that you are often the target, and you are often the person that thinks it's not going to happen to me because I've got these other employees that manage my email, and they're well trained, they're well schooled.
So, a couple questions. Maybe these are rhetorical. Is there any company too small? I'll ask them both at the same time. And are you too small to have this type of coverage? Right. And then kind of related, every business insurance offering must include this type of coverage.
Yeah, I don't think any business is too small. I mean, a small business arguably doesn't have the capacity to weather a storm like this, a shutdown like this. So, and the worst day as professional risk advisors, risk reduction, professionals that we are, is when we get a call about a claim and we say, oh, wait a minute, that's not covered. And the client says, why? Why would we use computers, we're on the internet. I mean, why would you not have covered us? Well, remember when we no, I don't remember. That's a really bad day.
Anytime you have an offering for businesses, is this just like, this is like,
yes,
it's just part of it. Like, you have to have this.
It is certainly part of our standard agency practice to say you need to have cyber insurance. Now, I would say the adoption rate in our book of business is in the 75% to 80% zone today.
Whoa, that seems high to me. Like, I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, we've been pushing it a long time.
Yeah, I think that's
because it's really happening. And we're a Midwest-based organization. We have offices in South Bend, Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Kalamazoo, Michigan. But today we've grown into Salt Lake City and Tucson and Phoenix as well, and we also have a Chicago office. So
you're headed west.
We're heading west. We skipped over a few states, but a lot of people are heading west. So we like the idea of growing economies like that, and have married up with some great partners out there. But my point is, we're not New York City, L.A., at least yet.
Right.
So, but this is not, this exposure, this risk profile is not limited to the big major markets. It's happening in.
Well, like you said, it's indiscriminate. Anybody. In fact, there's an argument that the smaller you are, the more at risk you are.
Yeah. Now, I want to make a point also. If you do acquire the coverage and you get to the claims paying or the claim scenario, you had mentioned something earlier, Tom, that made me think. How they negotiate ransomware. These carriers are sophisticated and knowledgeable. How they're negotiating a ransomware claim in a certain jurisdiction. They know who is on. They know how to negotiate that. That their initial demand, they might accept 50%, or caution, because they might say, hey, for $50,000 we'll give you your keys back, and you give or we'll give you access to your system. And you give them 50, and they give you half access back, and they say, we've now sold the rights to this lockdown to somebody else that for $25,000 more they'll give you the rest. We see that, but we're not going to know how to negotiate. The insured's not going to know how to negotiate that. You need a claims professional at a Chubb or a Travelers that knows that here's the wrongdoers we're dealing with here.
How involved do you get in? So there's been an attack. I like your when, not if, and trust me, we subscribe to this too. Right. Now attack has occurred, and depending on the size of your company, there's teams that engage. What role do you play post-attack, other than the coverage aspects?
Yeah, well, that's we're gonna engage a claims professional that is doing this on a daily basis, but sometimes they might issue what's called a reservation of rights letter to say, hey, we're not sure that this claim is covered. We're investigating under a reservation of rights that we may not actually cover the claim. So we're going to be engaging with the insured, with the claims professional to say, well, we think it is, or really applying the right pressure there to say the policy language would trigger coverage, or to the extent it's ambiguous language, that if it's ambiguous and it's a contract of it, you wrote the contract, so if it's ambiguous, then coverage applies. And so we're working hard with our clients to, bridge that and trigger coverage where appropriate.
Well, and that's great to hear, because if any hands need held,
that's right.
It's when the shit hits
providing comfort that we've done the best we can. The early adopters of cyber coverage, we've had some of those folks that did experience claims, and they were sure glad they had it.
All right. So as a business owner, if I feel like, I'm okay, we got the right team in place, and even if we were hacked, we'll get our data back in 24 hours. It's not worth the premiums.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that scenario, because they have customers. Depending on those customers may have demands of their suppliers. That's right. This is a web that you got to be thinking about.
Yeah, if you're a business that's engaged in supplier relationships, relationships where you're the supplier, I think it's important that your contracts department are reading very carefully provisions. These are requirements for cyber insurance are finding their way into contract relationships between businesses. And you certainly don't want to be in breach of contract because you weren't aware of that, or you didn't read it when you updated it. So I think that's important. I think you ought to have the coverage to begin with, but there may be another motivating factor, which is you're contractually required with your other clients. if you're a contractor and you're working in a healthcare setting or a educational setting, you might have access to some, or an airport setting, you might have access to some restricted areas. There's a good chance that there's going to be a cyber insurance requirement that you ought to be aware of. And frankly, anybody that has employees is going to have access to their personally identifiable information in a system that, if it's hacked, you've got an obligation to respond and notify. It's expensive and it's time consuming. And without the help of an insurance carrier or somebody to guide you through that process, it's going to be a expensive and bad day.
Bad few days, right?
Bad few days, bad few months maybe.
Well, and then, so back to the underwriting process, we talked about MFA, but is there a list of I'll call them must-haves that people should be aware of?
We do have a list, and it is available on our website, and maybe we could link that up. And just, I can't emphasize that going through that process with your IT provider or your internal resources is going to help point you to where vulnerabilities are.
So just one last question before we wrap up, Brad. But, I had a package once. I got a little jammed up in a business, and I thought I was covered. It said cyber. Turns out it wasn't really covered.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. A full-blown cyber policy is going to be identified as cyber liability policy. It will have its own policy number. It will have its own declarations page. Policy
so it should have more than just 2 paragraphs?
More than a throw-in the policy. You'll see terms such as data defender or cyber extender or things of this nature that are within a package policy that have a little bit of crime, a little bit of property, a little bit of liability insurance for maybe a smaller business. And listen, the carriers are providing a little bit of coverage, I think, to assist a business that might not have procured a formal cyber policy. But also, it's used to clarify we are not a full-blown cyber policy. We want to make very clear we have a $10,000 sublimit that we're going to offer you, and that is the extent of cyber coverage. Don't be misled or fooled that you have cyber insurance. And we do hear that sometimes from business owners with good intent. Oh, we've got cyber. It's in our package policy. I think a coverage comparison as to what that is offering at what limit versus what a full-blown cyber policy that's designed by a professional underwriting entity.
Tony, we'll probably need to have the guys back from Gibson just to talk a little bit more about the preparation. Whether you buy the policy or you don't buy the policy, getting ready and going through the underwriting is a great exercise.
It is
and
a
maybe
great exercise.
We'll have you guys back and talk about that some more.
Yeah, we'd welcome it.
You want to make sure you have the right coverage for your business, and you help get under the hood. Well, Brad, hey, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Tony.
I always feel smarter when
Tom.
we have guys like you around the table. So I
Mutual feelings.
That's right.
We need you guys.
All right, thanks.
Okay.